master plan. This session is really about getting into the weeds on customer advocacy, and what we are going to be looking at is, let me just share this presentation in full. Oops.
You can click the bottom right, actually. Bottom right, there is the expand icon. Yeah, that's
this one.
The one. Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, now I can't see your faces. But anyway, okay, here we go. Developing a customer advocacy plan, take 3. Okay, so what we're going to be looking at really is the process. Okay, so all of the things underneath the loyalty ladder framework are things, different models we're going to be looking at in order to get this idea of turning prospects through into customers, through into advocates for your business. And as I said, you know, in take 1, this is really, really important for SMEs, like most of us on the call. Okay, the power of our customers advocating for us is by far the best way of us getting customers, because it's less cost effective. Sorry, it's cost effective, and it also should result in a quicker sales cycle, right? Because, you know, the hard work of building the rapport, the trust, the knowledge about the product has already been done by our customers. So I wanted to just do a deep dive and get you all thinking about how you're going to implement a process in your business to create these advocates. Okay, so just as way of a quick introduction, it's basically customer advocacy really just simply means where customers become promoters of your brand. So they are essentially selling for you because of the experience they've had. And yes, we do need to get creative in how we do that. And hopefully, as we move through this particular module, you will be inspired to think, okay, well, maybe I could do it a bit differently. This is almost the antithesis strategy to Google AdWords. Okay, Google AdWords is really expensive. The change that's happening with AI and the delivery of information through the internet is just you know, it's making it harder to basically stay on the top of Google AdWords, even if we do have infinite amount of money, because people are searching in other ways, in other places for the same information. So they can really help. Customer advocates can really help drive organic growth, and you know, people trust customers, so people like buying from your customers. But the real key, you know, just comes down to this idea that, you know, as SMEs, we cannot afford to basically spend a lot of money on, you know, paid for advertising. And so we really do need to be creative when it comes to utilizing those customers that, you know, that we have got. So, you know, in terms of return on investment for advocacy, you're talking higher lifetime value, you're talking stronger brand reputation. There's a whole load of things that go with it. Okay, so really, really want to get you guys thinking about, you know, you don't necessarily have to pay for people talking about your brand if you are smart. And this is really what this session is all about. Okay, so first of all, let's be really, really clear, okay, that you don't start advocacy. Okay, you don't start with advocacy, and you don't necessarily start, you know, anywhere else other than up here in awareness. Okay, so in order to make somebody you know, an advocate, they go through a certain process. Okay, and I want you to think about where your customers are. Okay, so if we're thinking about growth engineering, for example, we've obviously got people that are really aware of the brand and are really excited about the brand, you know, so we do get a lot of people downloading our papers, right? But you know, then they move into the buying area, into consideration, and into purchase, and into usage. Now, what's really interesting is that when they're in the purchase and the usage stage, obviously you've got high passion and interest purchase stage because they're super excited about what the product could do for them. Then you go into the usage stage. The usage stage is obviously critical because if it breaks down there and it doesn't work quite according to plan, you can't get into loyalty and advocacy. Okay, so I want you to think about, let's say, you know, your top 10 or your top 20 customers, right? And work out where they are in this process, and think about the specific strategies you might be able to utilize with those individual companies in order to move them into advocacy. Now, what we need to be really clear about is that, you know, as I've said the whole time on this course, the big thing with humans is that everything is driven by emotion. Okay, and everything is driven, that emotion has to be personal. Okay, so you don't need to look at a customer advocacy program as I'm going to do this to every single client, right? You could just be looking at that customer advocacy program with 1 or 2 clients that you think you know, you can really kind of develop, you know, a really close and clear bond, you know, with, in order to take them into the advocacy. And obviously there you're looking for the amount they buy, you know, the kind of presence they have on the internet, the brand value. So don't necessarily think about this as something you've got to do with all customers. It would be great if you could, but you know, that's not always possible. And so the key really here is understanding where your customers are in this cycle, and understanding when they are ready for pushing into kind of outright advocacy. So really, if you haven't got, you know, a customer that you feel is really loyal and has done some great work, so for us that would be in the case of L'Oreal, or L'Oreal have done quite a lot of advocacy for us in terms of awards and things like that. We've also had other customers that have done, you know, joint, you know, online sessions with us and doing deep dives. But there is definitely a lot more that we could do in that kind of loyalty to advocacy area. So this is the first thing, right? So work out where your customers are, and if they are ready to become advocates, right? So that is the first thing. So what we're looking at here is a pyramid, and you know, obviously not all pyramids will get to the top. Okay, and the key thing to moving your customers from the bottom to the top is how emotionally connected they are to your why and to your 4 Ps. Okay, so if we look at the very bottom, we've got, you know, suspects. These are potential customers, and already here we are leaning into our why, and we are selling what the company, you know, is all about, those brand values. We're pushing out content which is truly reflective of, you know, our kind of golden orb, you know, what is great about our company. Then the prospect comes in and he shows initial interest, and at this point we are going to be looking at whether that prospect has the same types of values, whether you're talking about the same types of language, whether that prospect is getting what they think they've been shown as a suspect, right? So, you know, it's making that match and making that them comfortable with, yes, actually the product, price, place, promotion is all fitting in well, and you know, I'm going to make my first purchase, right? So then they are a customer, and that process between them being a prospect and a customer is full of excitement. There's lots of emotion in there because they're really excited that they found a supplier, they've found, you know, what they're looking for, and this is a kind of high point. Okay, then you know, there is a possibility of slightly going into the danger zone here, because if the customer isn't getting what the customer thought the customer was buying, then the customer starts to get, you know, a little bit angry and doesn't come a repeat customer, and at that point, you know, they're pouring out of the funnel, right? So we want to make sure that the onboarding process, or the purchasing process, and moving into you know, utilizing the product or service is really, really positive. And we can do lots of things to make sure we know that's happening, like pulse checks. We can just keep asking them repeatedly, are you happy with the process? Have we got it right? Is there anything we can improve, in order to, if there are issues, tackle them early and ensure that basically they are going to become a repeat customer. They're not going to drop out. So this temperature checking is, again, it's all about the emotions that the client is feeling. So if they're feeling, you know, frustrated or angry or whatever, what we want to do is let them, you know, burst that you know, frustration, talk about it, and try and get to some you know, solution. So then we've got a client that's a repeat customer, right? So the customer's happy. But what we want to do is we want to lean into that further. And again, what do we, how do we do that? We do that through communication, right? Individual communication. Are we giving you, everything that you need? Can we, give you things that are maybe kind of special edition or limited or something to really make that client turn into somebody who is emotionally connected. And you can't be emotionally connected unless you are allowed to feel special, right? Okay, so as a customer and a client, I'm basically getting my 4 Ps, but as a supporter, I should feel that I am really emotionally connected to this company, right? So things like the inner sanctum, or kind of, we did for a point, we did Juliet's Learning Tribe, which was all about getting people to learn about learning, essentially, for our customers. And that would be the kind of thing that we would want going on in terms of the supporter element. So this is different than how you would treat your clients. This is really trying to get emotionally connected with your customers to find out what drives them, and really give them that extra special something that you're not necessarily giving your clients. And again, it doesn't need to be for everyone, but there does need to be this feeling that they are getting into the inner sanctum, right? Or together you are creating an inner sanctum. Then as we move further up, this is your opportunity to give them the opportunity to actively promote your brand. Okay, they're not necessarily going to do it themselves, okay, but they can only be activated to be advocates for you if you have made this emotional connection, and if you have told them how you want them to advocate for you. Okay, so this is not something that just kind of happens, right? This is a process that we as SMEs need to really kind of look at and say, right, how are we controlling that emotional journey of the buyer in order to get them into being long-term brand representatives? And I can honestly say, throughout my career, this is something that I have always done badly. In terms of, we just have not leaned into this kind of like emotional connection through this advocacy pyramid, and we have not ever really had processes in place to really purposely make sure that we turn clients into supporters and supporters into advocates. And this is really the low-hanging fruit, and a lot of that is just organization, right? And we'll see that as we come through this presentation. It's organizing what you're already doing into something that basically creates a feeling where customers feel they can, if you like, give something back to the excellent experience that they've had with you. Okay, so basically, how are we going to do this? Okay, how are we going to drive up that pyramid? Well, there is really only 6 things that we can do, and they do not need to cost money. Okay, we all are ensuring that every dollar we make goes as far as it possibly can. Okay, so how we are going to do this is, first of all, we are going to ensure that our customers have an exceptional experience when they come in. And as I've said before, it's not always possible to give everybody an exceptional experience, but those customers that you identify with high brand value. So for us, obviously, people like L'Oreal, people like Victoria's Secrets, people like HP, these are the kind of people we need advocating for us. Why? Because they are wonderful brands. They are wonderful. Well, L'Oreal stands up and goes, for the 5th or 6th year running, we've won best mobile solution, in the galaxy. We want we want it to be L'Oreal, not, ABC, whoever it might be, right? So not all customers are equal, but we do need to make sure that the customers that are going to advocate for us are recognized early on, and we are constantly giving them that exceptional experience. Okay, the next thing is we have to open up with an emotional connection. Okay, people love people, right? Now, I know it might be an anathema to my generation of people on the call. You might be thinking that, well, why on earth would anyone want a day in the life of me? I mean, but actually they do. That actually they would probably much prefer to have a day in the life with Juliet Denny than they would have me talking about, functional skills and, how future skills are underrepresented. But that's what I talk about, because, that was my kind of understanding in terms of, how marketing, was. Now, that's not to say that subject matter expertise is not vital, because at some point you can't just be doing day in the life. You've got to actually show that you do have expertise in a certain area. But don't underestimate this idea of the emotional connection. Okay, and what that does mean is showing what is going on, in your company and the people in your company. And we've got some customers that are competitors that do that really, really well. You see how enthusiastic they are. So there's one company, particularly called that's called, whose MD is really, really vocal, and as soon as they post anything on social media or anything like that, everybody from the organization comes piling in to basically say how wonderful they are, and they talk about, this has happened. But that emotional connection is really critical, and you need to think about how you get that emotional connection. And in Rosie's homework, she sent through her homework in terms of her whys, and her whys are fantastic. It's basically love of the mountains, it's a love of nature, it's a love of how skiing feels when you are on the slopes. And so I think you've all got it in your businesses. And I just wanted to say, for those of you who have been posting your homework, they have been really fascinating. So, thank you very much, because I think it's just so interesting to see that emotional connection through the why in different types of businesses. I've really enjoyed that. So yeah, the emotional connection is important. So think about how you do that. And remember, not all emotional connection has to be positive, right? It can be the stress. So Kieran yesterday, who has a business that present, I think some of you saw his branding guidelines. What he was saying is there is so much pressure with some of these events. The event could be the biggest event of the whole year, right? And he's managing it. And so one of the things that he needs to do is be really, really calm at these events to ensure that everything goes perfectly. And that pressure is a really great emotional thing. People can, understand, how that must feel for the people that are organizing the event internally in the company, but also what it must feel like to work with somebody who really does understand how critical, and how stressed out these poor people are on the ground that are organizing the event. So stuff like that is the types of emotional connection you want to be talking about, and again, leaning into the presentation that we did on story, right? Emotional connection and using those 7 types of different stories can be a real way of, uncovering all sorts of creative ways to create emotional connection. But please, if you take away one thing from this experience, is the advocacy ladder does not work without an emotional connection. Okay, so critical, you find out how you can emotionally connect with your customers through your golden why. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to have rewards and recognition. And this is not, obviously Growth Engineering is a gamification company, but this doesn't have to be anything more than going into Canva and going, well done, team Victoria's Secrets. This is your certificate for launching a successful platform, right? It doesn't have to be anything more than that. In the newsletter, I want to give recognition to the Victoria's Secrets team who have single-handedly, launched this platform, and it's going to be amazing, right? And it's just in a newsletter that goes out to, all of our customers as we do. So you don't have to, it's not money, it's thinking outside the box in terms of looking at what your customers are doing and recognizing what they've done. Another load of information that I was absolutely flabbergasted. Our engagement rates at Growth Engineering across the board have gone up by about 30 or 40% in every single customer instance that we're delivering out. That's incredible. No other LMS company has, a learning management system company, has customers that are basically using the the platform 30 or 40% more than they were this time last year. Because obviously that just drags the cost, the cost of actually, you know, utilizing the return on investment of the platform. So, you know, it's just things like that. It's already happening, right? It's already there. We just need to be, you know, saying, I cannot believe, look at the what's happening with L'Oreal, look at what's happening with whoever it is. This is amazing. And also by giving them credit, by giving that love back, you're also able to create a community building. Yeah, so that, you know, how we got L'Oreal was through, sorry, how we got Victoria's Secrets was through the work that we did with L'Oreal. So obviously they would be very interested in understanding what L'Oreal are doing in the different territories. So how do we build a community about that? How do we build a community in around, let's say, retailers, or, you know, beauty products, or, you know, whatever it might be, to show expertise? And again, going back to this recognition and rewards, there are many people in these organizations that want to improve their, you know, their overall, visibility in their industry, right? You know, if you work for L'Oreal, you are smart as a button. So any opportunity to basically do a joint, a joint webinar, or, you know, talking about, the engagement rates compared to other, whatever it might be, this is something that they are going to want to do. If you keep asking in a way that basically is in and around rewarding and recognizing the work that they and their team have done. Yeah. And again, it is about setting up expectations early. So, you know, when you get the customer on board, one of the things we like to do, Mr. Customer, is get the customer on board. Then we like to, you know, map out the journey that you've had. And at the end, what we like to do is, you know, recognize the achievement, the highs and the lows, and talk a little about the story about how you got here, right? And we record that, and we brand it up, we make it really wonderful. And then you can use it as an internal resource. Again, it doesn't cost anything, but it does mean that you are connecting emotionally with the individuals that have selected your, company, and you're also giving them recognition and reward within L'Oreal. So we've done quite a lot of, when we first kicked off with L'Oreal, I know I keep talking about L'Oreal, but we have done this fairly well with L'Oreal. We basically did an overview of the experience that they've went through. So we talked about the kickoff workshops. We talked about, and obviously that has been a critical piece of collateral that we've used to get to get other clients on board as well. Okay, then we come to this idea of consistency. I mean, I feel like I say this on every single presentation, and I have to keep saying it: consistency, 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 consistency. You have to be consistent. That calendar, if you have marketing in your role, is your responsibility. It is not anybody else's responsibility. It is your responsibility. Your responsibility to ensure that you have a calendar at all times. You know what's happened. You know what's been successful, what hasn't been successful, and you are looking at what you've got coming down your calendar, and you are making sure that you are bringing in this advocacy piece to that engagement. So for here, you obviously want to be thinking about your mailing list. Now, I know email is being trashed just slightly in the way, Google AdWords is, but it doesn't mean to say it doesn't have a place in marketing. It really does. So for those of you who don't invest in your marketing lists, it really is an important place to invest. And of course, you can buy these lists, you can scrape these lists from LinkedIn, but you do want to make sure that every single month you are actively getting more new people on the lists. Now, and also remember, for those of us who are in the B2B section, you can, of course, buy high quality lists. And I really do recommend this, because it's a decent return on investment of new learning and development people, or new conference organizers, or new whatever it is coming into the market, because you want to get them to be familiar with your brand when they get to the job for the first time, because that's when they're going to be most creative. They probably will have been brought into that role because it needs to be changed up, or something's happened, right? So it's a big opportunity. So do not underestimate. These lists are cheap. We've subscribed to them for many years, but it does mean that every single month your mailing list is growing. So with that consistent engagement, you want to be pushing out on email, and you also want to be pushing out through your socials, right? And then finally, which is something that, again, you know, I wish over the years we'd done a lot better, is this idea of exclusive access. So exclusive access doesn't necessarily mean that you are limiting people to come into the experience on a limited way, but it could be that you invite them so they feel like they've got exclusive access. So, you know, we're inviting, you know, this section of people in it to a, you know, to a webinar, to a, you know, podcast, to a working session on the future of AI, to a whatever it might mean. That exclusive access piece, it may or may not be, you know, a real thing, but having that idea of having exclusive access is quite important. And remember, the bigger the client and the bigger that you want them to advocate for you, you do need to, you know, give them access to experiences that, you know, are going to be different than everybody gets. So do think about how you can have, let's say, everybody gets everything. You know, this section of people gets this, but there is an exclusive access element. And in the olden days, you know, that obviously used to be taking people to the races. But I mean, that in our world just does not work. You can't get people out of the office, and you can't, you know, basically take them on experiences. But you might be able to give them learning experiences, or an experience that would be acceptable within your industry. Okay, so this how is really, really, really important. So do sit down and make sure that you have got your notes firing off. And as I say, I've put the presentation in the notes, so you can just print it out and scroll all over it and try and get some ideas about how we're going to make this happen. And again, it is not about the money, okay? It's about you thinking about how you're going to put this into action with the budget you've already got, because none of us have got budgets. And, you know, we need different ways of creating advocates outside. I'm just going to pay for them. I'm just going to go to a trade show. I'm just going to do Google ads, because, you know, the return on investment on that is really, really not that good. However, this, you know, will work if, you know, we keep that consistent engagement, we keep measuring how it's going, and we keep pivoting in reaction to how we are doing. Okay, let's move on. Right, so in terms of the components you want in your program, okay, first of all, you want to start thinking about recognition systems. And so here you want to be thinking about as many different creative things that people love and admire about your brand. So it can be, you know, anything from how people are using the particular product, so and service, and you can create VIP tiers and status in that. It could be in and around the specific markets that they serve. It could be in and around, you know, numbers of different sort of levels of status. And really with here, you want to be thinking about, you know, if you can, how you can gamify the system. So, you know, it could just be things like, you know, this company has opened more newsletter than any other company in the history of, you know, what it might be. So fun little facts that, you know, you can just pick up on in order to basically give, you know, VIP and status to clients, you know, whatever stage they are in the process. The other thing is that there's no point having these status and recognition elements if there's no public acknowledgement, right? So yeah, there's no point, you know, everybody in growth engineering knowing that we, for some reason, have, well, not for some reason, we have absolutely smashed engagement out of the park. You know, I mean, you know, one of our competitors the other day wrote a newsletter saying that on average, for one of their retail clients, that 90% of their people log into the system once a week. Well, you know, for us, we have about 30 minutes worth of constant, you know, people on the platform every single day. So it's kind of like you look at it and you go, well, you know, they're making a big song and dance about something which is absolutely terrible, and we're not really making a song and dance about it. You know, we just kind of look at it and it doesn't really go anywhere. But it is critical that it does. You know, we absolutely have to ensure that we are sharing the love, because these customers are doing incredibly well on our platform. And it's not about us saying, you know, we own that engagement. It's about us saying our customer has got that engagement. They have smashed it out the park. So by framing it like that, it's much less of a, it's all about us, growth engineering, and it's more about, you know, our customers. So that public acknowledgement is really, really important. These people, that team, you know, have done something extraordinary that, you know, I want everybody to know about. And then of course you can have special badges and titles as well. So this is particularly important when you're trying to get people up from the decision where they make the decision to buy, right, up into repeat customers, and, you know, into trying to get them into advocacy. So you want to ensure when people are going through, you know, a setup process, or people are going through that they are actually being rewarded with, you know, funny little badges or funny or titles, you know. So you're saying, right, okay, well, when we, you know, go to market and we set up a platform, we want to basically have, you know, specific, so you're going to be, you know, the general, and you're going to be the this, and you're going to be the that, to make it fun and to make it interesting, and to make it, you know, clear what roles and responsibilities, you know, the clients have. You're going to be the chief ideologist, you're going to be the chief creative person, you know, So badges and titles to make them think, well, you know, I need to carry on, you know, could this be more creative, could this be more interesting, right? So it doesn't have to cost anything, it just needs a bit of thinking through in terms of, you know, that kind of customer commitment. Because once they have a badge, or once they have a title, or once they're known for something, and once you've celebrated and you've made it public, it's much more difficult for them to then, you know, break that emotional connections. Okay, so I would say never ever give a monetary reward. I just think it just makes everything tacky. So strike the monetary reward, never give a monetary reward unless the reward is you get the product for longer. Unless, okay. Then you also, now we're moving into the area of experience. So this is more B2C now. So in terms of a reward structure, you know, it might be, you know, if you refer somebody, you know, you end up getting, you know, an extra couple of days or whatever. In terms of experiential benefits, there's lots of different things that can be done around experience. People love an experience, whether that's, you know, in, you know, a learning, or, you know, a just seeing what's going on, you know, especially, you know, for the Andorran businesses we've got, you know, on the call. There is so much that we can bring, you know, people awareness of this absolutely beautiful place we live in, and they can actually experience, you know, what we experience, you know, every day, a day in the life. You can also do early access privilege. So this is particularly important with new features. So rather than say, hey, will you be a beta tester for this new feature, it might be, hey, look, you really do use you know, gamification in a big way, and, you know, bringing you into, you know, the process of launching, putting it onto your platform first, you know, that would be, it would be really, really great to get your feedback and really work with you to make sure that this particular feature fitted perfectly for you. That early access privilege is a really, really good way of upselling and cross-selling, right? So, you know, utilizing, you know, access, let's say, you know, to Zavmo through the growth engineering platform for specific clients in a way that makes them part of the consulting process, you know, is just a really nice way of sweeping them up in, you know, changes that are, you know, happening in the market, and bringing them along in a way that works for them. Then, of course, you have kind of exclusive content, which to a certain extent, you know, it can't be too exclusive, because then it's not really worthwhile producing the content. So, you know, with exclusive content, you just maybe want to label it exclusive content, but actually it might not necessarily be exclusive. It might just be, you know, you doing, I don't know, 4 or 5 white papers a year or whatever. And those go to, you know, the inner sanctum group or your clients before they go out to everybody else. Then you've got kind of training and learning access. So, you know, again, you know, just thinking about Kieran's business, you know, people absolutely love to nerd out. And, you know, I see this all the time with calls that I'm on with Cosmo. It's almost like they are fascinated with, you know, what people who do data science actually do. You know, it's almost like they've got these rose tinted glasses on, and they're just like, you know, just help me understand what is going on. And then, of course, as soon as he opens mouth, it's like, they have really no idea what he's talking about. But we might just be talking to the wrong people there, but training and learning access is really, really important. And we've done I personally have done a lot of that over the years through growth engineering. And I think it's really helped because people do like the content and they do like the stuff that we talk about in terms of, you know, gamification and just engagement. At the moment, there's a big interest in, you know, learning theory. So we've been doing some you know, a lot of work on learning theory, which has gone down really well. We're just about to do a series on the modern learner, and these things really do move us apart from our competition, because we really are seen as much more thought leaders than some of the, you know, the other larger and better funded, you know, leaning into what Rosie's homework was about, saying, you know, our competitors are just so well funded and we're not, and it's difficult, and it is, and this is basically, you know, where we can excel through these kind of things. And then of course, finally, you know, we've got special events. And special events, we can start marketing ages before and really kind of ramp up some excitement. Again, you know, yes, it is work, but at least you don't necessarily have to pay for it. Okay, so in terms of referral design systems, this is when we have, okay, got the customer to the point where they are emotionally engaged with the brand. You have consistently rewarded them, called them out, made them famous within the community, yeah, within your community. And so they're now ready to basically be picked out for, can you give me a referral, okay? So the best programs obviously tend to have rewards that are kind of directly related to the product or service. So, you know, if you know, you give me some or introduce me to XYZ, make this introduction. So BT might be a classic example for us. So if I went to Centrica and Pinder and I said, hey Pinder, you know, we're willing to do some customized you know, design work for you to make a personal, you know, a personal introduction to Mark Alera, who is the CEO of BT, to talk about, you know, AI and how, you know, AI is revolutionizing the learning landscape. And for that, you know, we will ensure that your IT team basically have, you know, a distinct set of, you know, whatever it might be. So though thinking really about how you can give something to the client as well as you know, getting what you want. And it really does need to be valuable enough to motivate action, and that doesn't need to be in terms of the size or the monetary value of what you are giving them. It just needs to make them feel really positive and good. So one of the things that was interesting when we started doing the Centrica pilot for Zavmo, because, you know, Zavmo is completely, you know, there's nothing like it in the market. One of the things that Pinder wanted to do is she was very happy to have, you know, the project inside out. What I mean by that is, you know, she wanted to have as much opportunity to share and to make visual the work that the L&D team are doing in Centrica, because this is bleeding edge innovation. Okay, so it's not that she wanted a discount. It's basically what she wanted was to be seen as, because she runs learning and development for Centrica British Gas, she wants to be seen as one of the people that are really embracing AI in a way that can be really transformative for the organization. Okay, so what's in it for her is not, you know, we didn't give her a cheaper price. We didn't, you know, it really is about making everything inside out and clear. So, you know, on the last call that we were with, again, it was like, can you come in? Can you film my team? Can you do this? Can you do that? Yes, of course, we can do all of that to ensure that the rest of the organization know the process that, you know, we're going through in order to embed this new feature. So, you know, critical kind of features, you know, might include kind of like, so this is again in a B2C world. So thinking about Zavmo, thinking about, you know, for a gin, thinking about, you know, the B2C, we really want to make sure that if we are you know, got a referral system in a B2C context, that it's got real-time tracking, that it's got automated reward distribution. And again, all of this is built into e-commerce tools. So let's not really overthink this too much. But from a B2B point of view, we just want to say, right, if we're identifying, you know, an A1 client, right, all the way through from, so for example, you know, new client comes in, something like Sephora, right, we want to make sure from the get-go that we're looking at this you know, chart here, and we're going, right, they're now in the consideration phase. What emotional triggers do we use to drive them to purchase usage, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So you're identifying those particular customers that you know are going to be extraordinarily valuable to the company. And we see this with our competitors as well, doing the same thing, just basically the incessant love bombing they do of, you know, a client in order to ensure that they do go from being prospect through to being a client. And then, of course, you know, in terms of user experience, nobody wants a referral system that basically is complicated to use. So, you know, basically the fewer clicks, and it just needs to be, you know, consistent. So in a B2B context, it would just be something very blunt. So here's a piece of paper, this is what you get. So, you know, these are the different roles you're going to play when we set up the platform. These are the rewards that I'm going to, the rewards and certificates you're all going to get when you've basically launched the program. You know, it's blunt, but it basically is consistent. And from a B2C point of view, we obviously just want it to be very, very clear that if somebody has the status, so in Zavmo, for example, in the UI, if we've consistently got somebody who is referring their friends to Zavmo, the best study buddy in the world, that person is rewarded on the interface, and people know that that person is a passionate advocate and, you know, is basically a super learner or whatever it might be. So we do want to have that, in addition to, we want to make sure that obviously any referral system we've got, it's easy for people to, you know, share the opportunity of referring us. So I don't know why I'm talking about influencers, because obviously I'm not in the generation who even understood what an influencer was when an influencer could be made. Now, obviously, everyone and their cat wants to be an influencer, but I just wanted to put this slide up because influencing is so important, and it can be done without paying. So obviously in the zeitgeist, it's like influencers get paid a load of money. We're not in that game, right? We're not in the game of paying people. What we need to be is we need to be smart about the influencers that we use, right? So what influencers are right for our business? Well, those are subject matter experts, right? They're subject matter experts and people that have been there, done that, and basically, you know, been there, done that, and bought the t-shirt, right? So we're looking for micro influencers, right? And they don't even have to have, they don't have to be famous. They can be anybody who is using your products and services. And the thing that's endlessly fascinating to me is that people love watching what other people are doing on you know, online. So, you know, we know that people spend hours watching people play games. Well, you know, if you're having a conversation with a personal tutor, you know, would people be interested in watching what they're learning about? Well, from my point of view, I certainly think it is, because when I'm demoing Zavmo and I'm like, okay, tell me what your role is. And so we go in and we go, right, this is your role, this is what I do. It's just absolutely fascinating, the questions that come up, because I have no idea how to manage a board, or I have no idea how to do, you know, cybersecurity, or I have no idea how to do. And so suddenly you're just learning, but you're learning from somebody who's been in the industry for a while. And so they're able to really talk with Zavmo to really get, you know, some really insightful, you know, learning. So it's that kind of thing. It's using things that happen every single day and getting people to, you know, submit what they might be doing. So we are talking micro influences here. We're talking about, you know, I'm going out for a walk, or I'm going skiing with my, you know, with my friends, and, you know, basically what does everybody think about the skis they bought at my shop? Or, you know, it's these kind of things that we can do that, you know, are just allows us to shout about things that are already happening. Obviously, we would love to get customer advocates, but we have to warm them up. We can't suddenly just launch ourselves onto customer advocates. So, you know, you could, you know, in a B2C setting, you could say, you know, if you're willing to give us, you know, XYZ testimonials, then we'll give you, you know, 10% off for the next 6 months or something like that. So these types of things to encourage customers to really want to do it are important. You can also have partnership models, and those can be aligned. So it could be, let's say, in the case of growth engineering, it could be growth engineering and Zavmo do a joint, conference about, how they're utilizing gamification. It could be, growth engineering doing a content, a joint with a content. It could be growth engineering doing a joint thing with Pedasis on, creating, game-based learning. So all of these things, you just need to look around the people that are, in your proximate, world, and say, okay, well, what can we just sit around and talk about? Because, people do want to hear that. And again, I'm not saying that overnight you are going to become a mega influencer, okay? But the other person to actually look is there's a guy called Shri on the call who I've worked with for many years. His Facebook following is insane. When this guy posts something, I kid you not, it's like he gets about 400. So, if you want to know how he's done it, then do reach out. And Shri, if you've got any top tips on, your use of Facebook, then please do let me know, because it is extraordinary. Every time I see a post from Shri, I'm like, dude, you are literally a legend. Did you put? Yeah, I can't see, but do you want to say anything now on that, because it is extraordinary what you've done?
Yeah, so thanks Julia. So it is some more like like you mentioned, consistency. One is I have been writing consistently almost on an everyday basis for the past I think more than 10 years, and have been focusing on a certain specific niche topics that I write, and for which I developed a following. So I have more than 30,000 followers on Facebook, and more than 15,000 followers on Twitter. Not Twitter, X. Sorry.
Yeah, it's very impressive.
Yeah. So that even led to me publishing books. Actually, my first book was kind of a collection of my blog articles, and so subsequently I wrote original books, but the first book was based on collection of whatever that I wrote on Facebook and blogs. So I think that is how it developed. So one, like you said, consistency, and the other one is sticking to a specific set of topics, and so that only those who are following those topics, that just start following, and having some original ideas is also important. Because they do look forward to some original thoughts and ideas, however controversial it can be. So I think these things help.
Yeah, Shri, thank you very much for that. I really valued Shri's specific point in keeping what you're talking about niche. Yeah, and we can see that in terms of the topics that he's been writing on, and certainly that's really worked for us at Growth Engineering. We talk a lot about engagement, and in the case of Zavmo, we'll talk a lot about personalization. So I think the point that Shri made about, laser focus on a topic is really important. And then I think the other point that he made so brilliantly is that idea of unique, bold and innovative content. So, do not underestimate the fact that if you are, really into whatever it might be, people do want to hear the kind of geeky nature of what you're talking about. So Shri, thank you very much for those 2 points, because I haven't covered them on the slide, and I think it's really important. But for those of you who are on Facebook, honestly, it is incredible. I mean, this guy posts and literally it is like a tsunami of people coming back to him. So really impressive. Okay, so just a quick case study on, so this time I've chosen growth engineering. Next week, I will make sure that I choose other businesses. The more you tell me about the businesses you're running, the better I can, use your example. So please do. Obviously, doing Flora Gin was pretty straightforward, because you can sort of imagine how beautiful and wonderful this brand is going to be, but for the other businesses, if you've got anything you want to share, I will definitely be doing case studies on your businesses if you share. So first of all, right, case studies. So growth engineering has been around for many years. It's a solid brand, successful company, growing customer base, but it is a big platform. Okay, it is a big platform, and it does require teams to basically manage it on the client end. Okay, so because of that, there are all sorts of interesting things we can do to help our customers. So in terms of what we could do for advocacy programs, and this isn't the answer, this is some ideas that the growth engineering team may want to think about. We could have expert user community forums, and particularly, there are some people in there that are more technical than others. So I'm thinking about the BT team, I'm thinking about the Centrica team. I mean, you guys are closer to the teams than I am, but is there an expert community that we could specifically invite to be part that would really focus on, niche topics? Is there a gamification element to our user community? So, are there people in our client base that are really fired up about using gamification? Is there a mobile community that is particularly fired up? And could we host an event that we could maybe invite not only current customers, but also potential other regions from other areas, where we go through and we talk about, what these mobile clients have done. So these are new mobile clients coming into the ether, but also mobile clients that have been around for a long time. And we could make it just open to, more departments in Victoria's Secrets, more departments in L'Oreal. So, using kind of stuff that's already around us, just thinking creatively about how we might do that. Certainly the certification program, when people have come through the very, very arduous process of doing setup, I think is a really, really good one. It doesn't have to be anything other than going into Canva or something really, really simple. The other thing is do we have a certification process for those companies that on a year-by-year basis are doing better and better and better on engagement? Because it's extraordinary how much engagement our clients are getting. So could we put something in and around, that? Also, client case stories. People really don't want to do the work of how arduous it was in basically setting up the platform. They don't want to do that work themselves. But if somebody comes along and goes, hey, we'd love to do a case study so that we can shout about it, and you can basically promote the extraordinary work you've done to your internal leadership, they're like, yeah, definitely, I'll definitely sign up for that. And then obviously, you take out the sensitive bits and it then becomes a case study. So I think we can do a bit more on that. And obviously, if we are doing that online, okay, because now people want videos, we can obviously wrap that up into a video testimonial without them necessarily even knowing. And the other thing is ROI documentation. So, looking at engagement rates, if people are using the same product, but they're using it a total lot more, it's really interesting for us to go back to every single one of our clients and go, do you realize that per person, per second on the platform, you're now paying, 0.1% as opposed to, £2.50 or whatever you were paying. So just looking at the impact of the platform and how we can, showcase that to make those passionate advocates is really interesting. And then, of course, is there anything that we can do with regards to a direct referral program? I think that will come through these customer success stories, because people do, there are lots and lots of different businesses in L'Oreal, as we well know, and some of those businesses do not have good learning technology, whereas our friends in L'Oreal do. So can we basically just allow them to become famous in their own world, and by doing that tacitly get referred into other areas? So these advocacy elements are critical. We have to have them, and they have to be a process that we review each year, and we basically make sure that we do execute on. Okay, so I've just done a quick case study here. I think I'm running out of time. Okay, so for those of you who want to stay, please do stay, and specifically the Zavmo people, please do stay. But I know that I'm on the hour, and I'm sorry about that. I don't know why I am over. I think it's because I can't see your faces. But anyway, so please do log off. This is a case study. I wanted to do a case study more on business to business, and then another one on business to consumer, and this is the business to consumer one. So Zavmo is basically an AI tutor. that basically personalizes learning based on, you know, what you want to do, where you want to go, your neurodiversity needs, you know, takes in a lot of information about you in order to present a conversational learning more like a coach or a tutor than, you know, kind of big fat lessons. So in terms of the referral program, we need, and we're a startup. I mean, we really, all of this stuff needs to be built. So in terms of the types of things that we could offer as a referral program, we could offer something like learn together, grow together, right? So really incentivize those people that are using the platform to share their experience. Is it like any other experience that they've had in terms of learning, but also recommending it to their friends. And then from that, they would get, you know, premium access or access for, you know, a period. And there might not be anything premium about what we're giving those people that recommend us, other than the fact that, you know, we're calling them premium because they've already recommended 1, 2, 3. And we might have something on there that the more you know, access you have, then you can change your avatar. So, you know, you can basically, you know, control what you look like or whatever, right? So we need a reward system that is built into the e-commerce, which we've still got to build. What other kind of unique features could we have? Well, we could certainly utilize, let's say, our XP functionality when we can, and we could certainly do something, you know, refer a friend, you know, when, you know, or you could give, you know, a friend an extra month if you've achieved a certain learning milestone. So you could say, right, well, if you've achieved, let's say, an award in, you know, sales and marketing, you can basically give, you know, I don't know, a week's worth of free training to a friend. And then obviously what you want to do, or what we want to do, is we want to make sure it's circular. So we've basically tagged in 2 things. First of all, the desire of our client base to refer clients to us, but also that they are being rewarded for that. And in an ideal way, we want to somehow utilize some sort of gamification feature to say, if you are a big user of the platform, you get more benefits the more you use the platform and the more you refer. So again, this is something we're going to need to really unpick when we're looking at how we do our e-commerce and our voucher schemes and all of that, when we kind of start bringing Zavmo into a consumer area. The other thing that would be really cool is if we could bring in learning circles, so almost like guilds. So because Zavmo is an individual experience, it's not a collective experience in a consumer level, it would be good if you could say, right, you know, currently in your cohort, and this is one of the gamification features we're going to be putting there, is this idea of, you know, in your cohort or in your guild. So these are people that are studying data science, or people that are studying, you know, cybersecurity, or people that are studying you are keeping up, you know, you are in the top 10% of, you know, this cohort, or the bottom 90%, or whatever it might be. To give them an idea that even though they are studying on an individual basis, and we are making learning as unique as they are, there are also people that are studying the same qualifications as they are. And we can certainly do that from a B2B point of view, but you know, from B2C point of view, it'd be good if we could shoehorn that in together. We have to be building some Zavmo tribes, and I know Zavi has already started thinking about that, but I think the gnarlier we can make the learning tribes, the better. So learning communities through, you know, people at different levels, so, you know, age groups, it could be different locations. So there could be a learning tribe in and around a certain school. You know, if we manage to target a particular school, could we have learning tribes for, you know, per school? And how would we kind of display that in order to give this sense of, you know, being in a tribe? So you could be in a tribe for a location, you could be in a tribe for, you know, a completion rate, you could be in a tribe for you know, particular certifications that you pursued. But this idea of learning tribes, I think, could be really good for loyalty and advocacy. And then, of course, we really do want to share the love. We want to make sure that we are sharing those case studies and showing success. And I think the more we can really lean into this idea of emotional resonance, the better, because ultimately the problem Zavmo is trying to solve is one of, you know, lots and lots of people really struggle in school. I mean, I really struggled in school. You know, I know my kids sometimes to lesser or greater extent struggled in school, and it's not because we're not bright. It's just because we've got neurodiversity issues, and it's sometimes not easy. It's very, very easy to get left behind. And so I think this idea of this emotional connection, I think is really, really powerful, because so many people do understand that, you know, learning and curiosity is wonderful. It's fascinating. But if you are locked out of being able to, you know, learn, it just crushes you, and it can mean the end of you never, or not even ever really starting your career, because, you know, you didn't get the right qualifications or whatever. So I think there's lots of emotional connections we can make with Zavmo, which, you know, obviously we're on the beginning of the journey, but, you know, really looking forward to seeing how we can kind of lean into that in order to, you know, open up, you know, and share the love, and get our learners, hopefully, through their successful, you know, being able to get their GCSEs, being able to get their A levels, or whatever it might be. Hopefully they will be able to, you know, give us positive testimonials, because it's personalized to them and the way they learn. And then, of course, what can we do to gamify the whole thing in terms of champion levels? So, you know, are there champions there, that people that we have, you know, have formed a relationship with us based on the fact that, you know, we are making learning unique. We are, you know, allowing those people, or, you know, facilitating this personal growth, because learning is being, you know, delivered to them in a way that helps them exceed in a way that they've never been able to do that before. Can we create an advocacy program where those people are seen as champions of different types of, you know, neurodiversity, champions of, you know, kind of personalized, you know, education, and champions of just basically, you know, inviting other people to have that experience of personalized learning in order to get where they want to get to in their careers and, you know, their lives. So lots of things we can do in terms of advocacy programs. So then finally coming to the end, and again, I apologize, I am 6 minutes over. We'll probably end about 8 minutes over. You cannot manage what you cannot measure. Okay, so it's all well and good having creative ideas for advocacy programs, and we all need to have creative ideas for advocacy programs. Okay, but first of all, you've got to have a plan. Okay, you've got to have a plan. So what are you going to be doing on a monthly, weekly, daily basis? Okay, and then you have to measure it. Okay, and again, I come back to the case study of, you know, Harry Cloak, who runs marketing at Growth Engineering. This guy measures everything. You could ask Harry what happened to Growth Engineering's marketing 6 years ago, and he'd be able to pull it out. So the importance of that is that when things happen in the market, and you know, when you look at the 5 forces, if you don't have you know, numbers you can go back and you can look at, you don't know, you know, well, A, if you're improving or not, but also what's happening to your pipeline, because the marketing that you're doing is a really early indication of what's going to happen to sales. And so if you look at the activity on marketing, if it's not going in the right, if it's not going in the right way, quite simply, you know that your sales, you know, 10 months down the line won't be going the right way. So it's really, really important that you're measuring your marketing activity, but overall, but also with specific examples to referrals, you're measuring your net promoter score. If you've got low net promoter score, you're really going to struggle to get engagement. So this idea of emotional engagement, emotional attachment is really, really important in order to improve your net promoter score. Rewards, recognitions, again, really, really important, that you are rewarding and recognition, you know, the people, in order to, when they do actually launch, send them a net promoter score in order for it to be high. You do want to be monitoring your referral conversion rates. So, you know, depending on how that's going to be done through e-commerce. And, you know, overall, you just want to be looking at things like advocacy program participation. So, you know, are people turning up when you invite them, when you put on an event? Is it well attended? And I think, you know, mostly it is. If it's geeky enough, if there's enough, you know, value add information there, they will turn up. Is there enough user generated content? And is that moving forward? What's going on your social media? Your social media is, you know, arguably more important than what's going on in your website. You know, in today's world, it really is all about what we're doing in social media. So we all, for those of us who are a certain age, really need to get with social media, because it is a tricky one, because that really is taking over the way the marketing traffic is coming. And then ultimately we need to be looking at, you know, customer, the lifetime value of advocates. So once we have an advocate, you know, how can we basically maximize those advocates in order to push out, you know, our customer referrals? And obviously there is lots and lots we could do in growth engineering, and lots to think about in the world of Iridescent and Zavmo, because we haven't really started. So in terms of implementation, it did strike me, thinking about rewards programs, that it is a long-term endeavor, right? Because you're making these emotional connections from each step, right? What you don't want to do is, you don't want to think, right, I'm going to design something that's going to happen like that. So this is what I would say with reward programs and advocacy is, it's a strategy piece that needs to be really thought through really well. And so look at it as, you know, basically this might take you a year to do, right? Because when you're creating your emotional connections from the time that a customer comes in as a prospect and you're converting them into a sales, you're going to be treating them slightly differently, because you know you want to get them into an advocacy position, right? So don't think that you're going to be able to do this immediately. Think through the strategy, think through what it means to your business, but know that it might take, you know, a full 12 months to implement, right? And I think that's important, because there are lots of things we've spoken about in the course that can be done quickly, but the advocacy program, I think realistically will take longer, just because of the fact that you're trying to bring people through from the early stage of them knowing you, and you're trying to put in specific key triggers all the way through to get them to be passionate advocates. So yeah, homework is basically to design an advocacy program for your brand. And as I say, I don't have masses and masses of time, but I really have enjoyed seeing some of the homework. I enjoyed seeing Kieran's presentation yesterday. His branding guidelines look super fly. So please do feel free to dump it, to dump whatever homework you want in the chat. I can't really do case studies on businesses that I don't know. So the more I know about your businesses, the more I can basically create case studies. And I'm more than happy to use, you know, any case study. It's just basically putting the idea of business to business, you know, advocacy and business consumer advocacy, which are obviously slightly different because you've got different platforms and stuff that you're using. So yeah, so that's it from me today. Thank you very much. Apologies that the beginning of the session was a little bit all over the place, but I think we got there in the end. And Shri, thank you very much. If you do have any tips about anything, I would be really interested to hear them. And yes, we've got a hand up from Fora. How can we help? Yes, lovely.
It actually was kind of between you and Shri. I was just wondering, with Instagram seems to be a bit of a minefield from what I've discovered, in terms of, obviously, just because you have followers doesn't mean that they see your content, and just learning to use those hashtags and you know, how to engage people. So I was just wondering how that works for Facebook, if you guys know, just because I find Facebook quite kind of knowing how to increase that kind of social media engagement on Facebook, whether that's like a, you know, are you using hashtags in the same way as Instagram, or is it a whole different system that you need to learn?
Shri, I'm not really on Facebook. Does anybody on this call? I mean, Shri,
there's an interesting point on Meta and Facebook. So recently, in the last sort of 2-ish years, the price of adverts, as everyone has moved to TikTok and Instagram, the price of ads have increased, like, interestingly gone down a bit. However, the engagement and things like that haven't. The general rule, and to be honest, Sam Dyson is really good at this sort of stuff. That's what he focuses on. But it's really important to sort of segment what type of content you're generally going to be displaying based off the type of video that you're displaying, right? So if you have a short, generally they're really good for virality, so building lots of impressions, and then you'll have content that are for more longer form affinity building type stuff. So you've got one where you're focusing on going viral. If I sort of defer to Zavi, a lot of the creative stuff that he builds out are adverts for Zavmo that is designed to get as many impressions to our target ideal customer avatar. And then behind it, it's supported with videos of Juliet and I answering questions about the business, saying, oh, did you know that there's a really interesting type of neural network that you can use this for and that for, and that builds affinity. And then the whole purpose of that, right, is building a pipeline to turn your rented audience on, you know, Instagram, Facebook, into an owned audience that you can talk with and engage with far more, and then ideally convert to a sale. So I think it's sort of the type of content and what it is, you know. So going back to it, shorts for impressions, then longer form content for building affinity, and then general messages and automations with that longer form content to build those conversions into sales.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think the whole social media thing is I'm not as confident. I mean, this new wave of people that have come in, you know, to my kind of working world have definitely kind of swept me off my feet and sort of encouraged me to do social media, you know, in a different way. I mean, I think Shree's one of the things that Shree does really well is he focuses on Facebook and Twitter, and he does write quite long form. So what he writes is quite specific and quite consistent. So he does post sometimes about, you know, when he's doing fitness challenges, but generally it's quite long form and it's quite kind of serious. What I would say is that the different platforms definitely have a different you know, requirement. So I do a lot on LinkedIn, and I find that really helpful, because I can write my long form stuff you know, in a way that, you know, is good for targeting B2B. But I think as a B2C, you've got to be on TikTok, you've got to be on, you know, the reels, and you've got to do long form content as well on YouTube. I think it's just where we are, you know. Okay, guys. Well, look, thank you very much. I promise we won't roll over, you know, again. Yeah, thanks very much. Have a wonderful day, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Cheers.